Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became six-path savior and united the hearts of Yugito, Temari and Kurotsuchi, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start a new fanfic. Naruto looked up from his place on the ground in disbelief at the sight before him. Sasuke, his teammate and rival, for whom he shared a mutual hatred, was riddled with Senbon needles. They covered his arms, legs, and torso, and 5 were lodged in his neck. The Uchiha coughed up blood as the life-giving fluid flowed from all his wounds. Sasuke felt his body getting colder, weaker, and both boys were absolutely certain he had no chance of survival. "What's with that look, loser?" Sasuke asked as he turned his head and looked down at the blonde. "Why, you saved me," Naruto said, thought as he ran through all the events of the day in his mind. How he had woken up that day in Wave to find his team missing, how he saved Inari and his mother from those 2 thugs. Then when he arrived at the bridge he had to admit this was stupid in retrospect, announced his presence and then entered the Dome of Ice Mirrors. Sasuke was fighting the imposter hunter Nin. Maybe, if he had concealed himself or done something different, Sasuke wouldn't be. Sasuke thought of all his interactions with Naruto before then. He was an annoying fool, deserving the title of dead last, and it was irritating that the blonde seemed to think of himself as his rival. But as annoying as he was, he had saved him, likely at the cost of his own life. He didn't know why, it was just instinct. Maybe, he thought to himself, briefly remembering his family. It's because I didn't want to lose someone again. Much as he hated to admit it, Naruto and Sakura were the closest things to friends he had. "I hated you," Sasuke said. "Then, why did you save me?" Naruto asked. "I never asked for your help," the blonde yelled, refusing to accept that someone else gave their life for him. "I don't know," Sasuke admitted. "My body just moved on its own, idiot." A moment later, the black-haired boy was unable to stand anymore and fell backwards. Naruto caught him and Sasuke began to say what he believed would be his last words. "That man, my brother, I told myself I wouldn't die until I killed him," Sasuke told the blonde, shocking him. "Don't let yourself die too." The boy's eyes closed and he became still. Naruto's eyes widened and tears began to flow from his eyes. "He landed a blow on me without flinching, and died protecting you," Haku said as he got himself off the ground. To protect a precious person, knowing it was a trap, he was still able to jump in. "He is a shinobi that deserves respect," he said on one knee. "Is this the first time you saw a friend die?" he asked, now standing. "This is the way of the shinobi," he said as he entered a nearby mirror. "Shut up," Naruto said quietly. "Sasuke, I hated you too, and yet," Naruto thought as he felt a stinging sensation in his eyes, far more intense than what would normally accompany tears. "I won't forgive you." These were his last thoughts before his mind blanked out. A few moments later Naruto gently laid the seemingly dead genin on the ground, his eyes hidden by shadows. He stood up and remained stationary, displaying no visible emotion. Haku's eyes narrowed behind his mask. The boy's demeanor had changed entirely. "What's wrong? Have you given up?" Haku asked, hoping Naruto would give up. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped behind his mask when the boy raised his head and glared, revealing his eyes. His once blue eyes had turned entirely purple, marked with concentric rings centered on his pupil like ripples in a pond. "Wah! What? A dojutsu? But I've never heard of one with this description, and as far as I know, Konoha only has the Sharingan and Byakugan." The now purple-eyed blonde stared at him, his face emotionless and his eyes deathly cold. Kakashi and Zabuza continued their own battle. Despite his words that he believed in his students, which were largely true, the copy ninja couldn't deny that he was worried. The two were fresh out of the academy, and while they both had a lot of raw talent, the imposter hunter ninja had obviously received training for many years from a ninja of the same caliber as him, and he knew little of the boy's bloodline. Even if Sasuke awakened his own bloodline, it would be at its lowest level and at best allow him to follow his opponent's movements. These thoughts in mind, he decided it was time to put his plan into action. He quickly pulled out a scroll, flipped it into the air, ran one of his thumbs across a wound on his chest and in one fluid motion, unrolled the scroll and ran his bloody thumb across it. Zabuza, can you hear me? Neither of us has time to waste. Kakashi said as he whipped the scroll around him. This might not suit your style, but let's end the fun. The Sharingan wielder threw the scroll into the air, caught it and made hand sign. And finish this now. HMPH, sounds interesting, show me what you can do, Kakashi. Zabuza said, his voice echoing from every direction in the mist. Meanwhile in the dome of ice mirrors, the now purple-eyed boy glared at Haku. You've become cold and focused, you have the look of a true shinobi in your eyes. Haku said. He waited but received no response. Are you going to try to avenge him? I do not wish to harm you anymore. Again, he received no response. He raised his defenses when he saw the boy tense. Here he comes. Haku thought. His eyes narrowed as the boy charged forward, moving with greater speed than before. Haku leapt from the mirror, moving at speeds invisible to the eye and throwing his several needles as he moved forward. He was shocked when the blonde vanished from sight, the needles flying harmlessly through the air where he had been a moment before. Suddenly, his eyes bulged as he found the wind knocked out of him. Naruto, his face still displaying no emotion, punched Haku in the stomach, sending the androgynous teen flying through the air. He landed on in a crouch and promptly jumped out of the way when the blonde appeared above him and attempted to grab him by the head. What is this? Haku thought in shock. He's entirely different from before. Haku placed his arms in a cross formation, Senbon appearing between his fingers and began rapidly throwing a hail of the needles at the blonde. Naruto simply held out his left hand, his palm facing the teen. Haku's eyes widened once more when he saw the needles hit some form of invisible barrier, bouncing off of it and clattering on the ground. A barrier? What kind of jutsu is this? What is this boy? Haku jumped back, making sure not to take his eyes off the blonde as he attempted to reach one of the mirrors. Suddenly, he found himself being pulled on by an irresistible force and propelled through the air towards the blonde, barely able to move. Impossible. The blonde pulled back his right hand, balled it into a fist and punched Haku in the face as he approached, the force of the impact creating a deep crack in the mask. He was sent flying into the air, cracking one of his mirrors upon collision. Before he could fall to the ground, another invisible wave of power slammed into him, sending him flying through the mirror and the air before bouncing off the ground and skidding to a stop, the crack in his mask growing larger by the moment. As he began to stand, the dome of ice mirrors shattered, falling to the ground in countless pieces. He looked up to see the blonde, who stood unmoving in the center of the rain of shards. Zabuza, he thought as his mask began to fall apart. The blonde suddenly charged forward to end it. I cannot defeat this boy, I am. As Naruto reached the teen, he reached out to grab him by the face when he stopped, his clawed hand mere inches from the boy's face. Looking at the blonde's eyes, he saw him blink, emotion returning to his expression in the form of surprise. You're the guy from, Naruto said as he snapped out of whatever trance he had entered. Everything that had just happened had been a blur to the boy. The boy noticed how his view of the world had changed. Though he could still recognize the older boy he'd met in the forest, he now saw the world as black with white outlines and he could see the chakra coursing through his body. Why did you stop? Haku asked. I killed one of your precious friends, why can't you kill me? Naruto looked back at Sasuke's unmoving form, the chakra-filled mist obscuring the boy, before finishing his motion and punching Haku, though his strength had returned to normal and it merely knocked his back to the ground. Haku coughed up blood as he raised himself up on his arms and began to get up again. What happened to that power? You can't kill me like that, he said as he wiped away the blood on his mouth. To show mercy to those who stand against your master is a betrayal to your life's purpose. What use are you to anyone then? Your life has no meaning. Quote. Well, speak for yourself. Naruto said. I am speaking of myself. I am no longer of any use of Zabuza. Haku said. Why would you devote your life to someone like that? Someone who works for scum like Gato has no honor. Naruto shouted, unable to understand why Haku would give his life for someone like Zabuza. There were once others who mattered to me. My father and my mother. Haku began. I was born in the land of water, in a small village heavy with snow. My parents were farmers and very poor. Our life was hard but we were happy, but then everything changed. Because of something that happened long before I was even born. What do you mean? What happened? Naruto asked. It is in the blood. Blood. My father killed my mother and almost killed me. Haku said to Naruto's shock. After years of suffering civil wars, the people of my land came to fear and hate anyone who carried a Kekkei Genkai. Kekkei Genkai. Its special powers are jutsu passed on through certain clans, passed down from generation to generation. The clans were exploited for all sorts of battles because of their powers and were much feared. Once the wars were over, it was feared their presence would only bring more war. So after the wars were over, they hid their abilities, knowing that discovery would mean death. If you were to search the memories of that boy or your clan, you would probably find this too. My clan? Naruto asked. Have you noticed a change in your vision? You seem to have a dojutsu, like that boy's. Haku said, and Naruto's purple eyes widened, now understanding the change in his sight. Haku then went on to explain how his mother had hidden her bloodline and married a farmer, but because of him they were discovered. His father then killed his mother, before he instinctually defended himself, killing his father and those who were helping him in the process. How he had lost his purpose and that no one wanted his. That Zabuza was the first to acknowledge him. I'm no longer useful as a tool to Zabuza. Naruto, I want you to kill me. Kakashi made hand signs and slammed the scroll he was holding into the ground. Ninja art. Summoning. Earth style. Fang pursuit jutsu. Kakashi called out and the kanji in the scroll took on a life of its own and traveled into the ground. HMPH, whatever you do, it's useless. You can't find me, but I can find you. Zabuza said with his eyes closed. Kakashi, you are completely in my hands. Zabuza said before a rumbling sound caught his attention. Suddenly a dog ripped itself out of the ground and bit at his left foot, which he lifted out of the way, but another came up and bit into his right foot. Suddenly, all of Kakashi's remaining ninja hounds erupt from the ground and bit into him, completely immobilizing him. I realized if I couldn't see you, I'd have to smell you. My ninja hounds can follow a scent anywhere. I let you through my guard. I wanted you to cut me so the scent of my blood could lead them to you. Ah, the mist is clearing. Know what I see? Your death. Do you intend to talk me to death? Zabuza growled. In a way, yes. With a single command, my ninja hounds will tear you apart. See where your ambitions got you. After your assassination of the Mizukage coup failed, you were forced to flee with your remaining followers and became a missing nin. You needed money to strike back and hide from the hunter nin, that's why you're working for Gato. Kakashi said, alright Zabuza, now, I'll show you my own jutsu. Kakashi made 3 hand signs, held up his right hand and grabbed his wrist. Lightning and chakra gathered in his palm. Reikiri. His chakra's so strong it's visible. Zabuza thought in awe of the jutsu. I won't let you kill Tazuna. He is the symbol of courage in this land. This bridge is the hope of this land. Your ambitions will sacrifice countless lives. That isn't the way of the shinobi. Who cares? These useless people and their petty dreams. I have dreams of my own. But to have a dream you need to have a future, and yours is all used up. Haku stood before Naruto, waiting for the boy to deliver the final blow. Go on. Kill me, why do you hesitate? Haku said, his voice devoid of emotion. Naruto shook his head in frustration, clenching his fists as he tried to comprehend why Haku wanted this. How can you care about someone who uses you like a tool? Because he gave me a purpose and a reason to live. Naruto, for both of our sakes, do it. There's no other way. No, Haku said with a smile. Reluctantly, Naruto drew a kunai. He paused for a moment, thinking about what he was about to do. I feel like, if we had met differently, we could have been friends. Naruto said as he closed his eyes before he drew a kunai and charged forward. At that moment, Kakashi charged at Zabuza, intent on ending it. Haku sensed his master was in danger. Naruto had almost reached Haku when he reached up to and caught Naruto's hand. The blonde had seen the move but wasn't fast enough to react. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he struggled to move his hand. Forgive me, Naruto, Haku said before looking to Zabuza and Kakashi's battle. Naruto caught this and followed his gaze. His eyes widened when he saw through the thinning mist Kakashi and Zabuza, his eyes showing him their chakra too. He saw Kakashi charging towards Zabuza holding a mass of chakra in his hand, intent on impaling him. I can't die yet, Haku said before disappearing in a body flicker. Naruto's new eyes allowed him to follow Haku's movements somewhat and see the other's chakra in the mist. He saw Haku appear between Kakashi and Zabuza, intent on taking the blow for his master. What Naruto didn't see was Haku throwing Senbon at Kakashi's summon scroll, which lay where he left it. As he ran towards them, something clicked inside Naruto. On instinct, he held out his hand just as Kakashi was about to reach Zabuza and Haku. Stop! Naruto yelled, and with that, a wave of pure gravity, not that those there knew what it was, all they could tell was that it was an unstoppable force, was unleashed at the battle. Kakashi, Zabuza and Haku were all knocked off their feet and driven into the bridge hard enough to crack the stone. Kakashi's attack disrupted by the force and his hounds dispelled as they flew through the air as Haku had pierced the summoned scroll with his Senbon. Naruto's eyes widened, wondering if he had done that and if so, how. What the hell? Zabuza asked as he began to get up. He looked up and saw Haku before him, picking himself off of the ground. The masked ninja's eyes widened as he realized the boy almost sacrificed himself for him before he shook himself out of it. Well, look at what we have here. A voice rang out from behind Tazuna and Sakura. The ninja and Tazuna turned to see a diminutive figure in the fading mist. Their eyes widen as the mist clears enough to see that the figure is in fact Gato, and behind him stood a massive horde of thugs, all wielding weapons. I pay for a top-quality ninja, and he gets laid out like this. You're a real disappointment, Zabuza. Zabuza's eyes narrowed as he glared at his employer. What is the meaning of this Gato? And who are these thugs? Well, I just had a change of plans. New plan, you die right here. Quote. What? Zabuza asked and Haku's eyes narrowed. You're too expensive, so I decided to take you off the payroll. Of course, even these guys cost something, so do me a favor and kill some of them. Think you can handle that, demon ninja of the mist? Look at you look about as demonic as a wet kitten. The thugs behind him began to laugh with cruel smirks on their faces, unaware they were basically about to commit suicide by ninja. Well, Kakashi, it would seem our fight is at an end. Zabuza said. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Kakashi replied in a crouch. He noticed Naruto's eyes but said nothing. At first, he thought they may have been an affect of the Kyuubi's chakra, but he quickly dismissed that thought. He decided it would be best to talk about that later. Naruto, Sakura said as she and Tazuna wisely decided to run to the other side of the pair of Jonin now that Gato and his thugs were over there. Where's Sasuke? Sakura. Naruto began sadly. He's fine, Haku said, getting their attention. In order to remove him from the battle, I placed him in a death-like state as I did for Zabuza earlier. He'll wake up in a few minutes. What? Naruto asked as all the Leaf Ninja and Tazuna's eyes widened. Why didn't you tell me? You let me think he was dead. I wanted you to kill me after I lost. Had I told you, you wouldn't have done as I asked. Haku replied. HMPH, you're still too kind-hearted Haku. I've told you countless times you should always finish off your opponents, though I suppose that for once it's paid off, Zabuza said. Enough of this. Take them down, Gato said as Sakura ran to the immobile Sasuke. She held back tears upon seeing Sasuke's condition, remembering Haku's words but still worrying about the Uchiha. With Gato's command, the thugs charged. What followed was not even worthy of being called a battle. Naruto created 5 shadow clones, much to the thugs' shock. Though that fear was quickly relieved when the clones began to act confused, as if they couldn't get their bearings, and soon, they dispelled, leaving a slightly dazed Naruto. The confidence this spectacle gave them didn't last long as, seconds later, an image of a demon appeared behind Zabuza. Naruto, Kakashi, Zabuza and Haku sped forward to meet them. The thug weren't even skilled enough to compete with Naruto, especially with his eyes enhancing his performance. His eyes not only saw in greater detail, they also easily followed their movements, though they couldn't predict or memorize them like the Sharingan. Still, this allowed him to read their movements, and the thug's skill couldn't compare to that of a ninja, even a fairly poor one like Naruto was now. He knocked out his opponents while the others simply killed them. Haku may have had a problem killing some kids, but not thugs like these. Soon, the remaining mercenaries were abandoning their employer and Gato was cornered by the famed demon ninja. Wait a minute, the tyrant said fearfully. What was it you said? I look as demonic as a wet kitten. Zabuza growled as he approached the man. The midget backed away, holding his hands in front of his body in a vain effort to protect himself, his eyes wide with terror. He briefly looked backwards when he felt the back of his foot touch the air and saw it was halfway off the bridge. There was nowhere left to run. Hang on. Let's be reasonable. I underestimated you. You're more than worth your payment. In fact, I'll pay you triple. I'll give you anything you want, just name it. Please don't kill me, said Gato as he continued to beg for his life. No deal, Gato. I should have guessed you'd pull something like this. Look at you, even now, you refuse to die with dignity. Begging for your life like the coward you are. Zabuza sneered as Gato whimpered, cowering in fear from the demon of the mist. See you in hell. Zabuza swung his sword and cut the midget's head off. What, did I die? Sasuke asked himself before he heard Sakura calling his name. Wait, Sakura, am I? Sasuke's eyes slowly opened and Sakura looked into his eyes, her own widening as she saw him look at her. Sakura. Tears welled up in Sakura's eyes, even after Haku told them he was just in a death-like state. When she saw him, she had feared he was truly dead. Sakura wrapped her arms around the boy and cried in joy. Sakura, that hurts, Sasuke said. So sorry, Sakura said as she got up and composed herself. What about Naruto, and that masked kid? Sasuke asked as tried to stand. Don't move, you're not fully recovered yet. Anyway, don't worry. He switched sides, so did Zabuza. Sakura said, trying to put him at ease. Sasuke turned to her with a quizzical expression. What? He asked in confusion. Apparently, Gato decided they cost too much and hired a bunch of thugs to take us all out. Tazuna said. Bastard learned the hard way, street thugs don't match up to ninja. Sasuke's brow furrowed as he processed this information. Did Naruto defeat the masked guy? I don't know, I couldn't see through the mist and there's a lot I don't know, but there's something up with his eyes. I think he has a dojutsu like your clan's, Sasuke. What? Naruto has. Hey, guys look, Sakura called out. Sasuke's up. Kakashi, Haku, Zabuza and Naruto turned to them. Sasuke was surprised when he saw Naruto's eyes. For some reason, he found them vaguely familiar, but couldn't place where he had seen or heard of them before. Hey guys! A voice called out. They all turned to see Inari standing there with all the villagers. This is, Tazuna began in shock. Pride welling up inside him at seeing his entire village had been inspired to stand up to Gato. Sorry, Looks like we were a little late. Inari said. Don't worry about it, it was nothing we couldn't handle. Naruto replied. What shall we do now, Zabuza? Haku asked his master. Zabuza crossed his arms, considering his options. He had known it was a mistake to trust Gato, but they'd needed the money. I suppose we need to find a new employer. The two of you are welcome to stay at our place for a few days. Tazuna said. After we tried to kill you. Zabuza raised a non-existent eyebrow. Well, you seem pretty down on your luck, and you did take out Gato. Tazuna replied. Well, since I'm not really in a condition to go anywhere tonight, I suppose we'll take you up on that. Don't regret this later. Naruto. Kakashi said, getting his students' attention. They were too far away from their teammates for them to hear what they were saying. What exactly happened in that dome? Naruto explained what had happened during the fight with Haku. So, you just blacked out, and when you came to, Haku had already been beaten and had given up. Yeah, everything between when it looked like Sasuke died and Haku's mask breaking was a blur. Naruto said, his brow furrowed as he tried to recall what had happened. I see, Kakashi said. He fought and defeated Haku without being conscious, fighting purely on instinct. Was it the Kyuubi? No, we all would have felt its chakra and its power wouldn't have simply receded like this. The only other explanation would be that he was overcome by the genetic memory of this bloodline he's unlocked. But, I've never heard of such a thing happening before, or at least not in the Uchiha or Hyuga clans. And where did it come from? Neither Sensei nor Kushina had a dojutsu, or a bloodline for that matter, unless you count the Uzumaki's longevity. Do you know what they are, Kakashi-sensei? What do they look like, anyway? They're purple with 4 rings centered on your pupil. And no, I don't recognize this dojutsu. Seriously, that sounds pretty freaky, though I guess it's cooler than those Sharingan eyes. Naruto grinned. Though it does make everything look kind of weird. I'm seeing everything is black with white outlines, and I think I can see your chakra. Does the Sharingan make everything look like this, sensei? He said, looking around before raising his hand and staring at it. No, though I can see traces of chakra. Naruto, you should know dojutsu are coveted by the villages, it would be bad if word got out about those eyes. What's to worry about? I'm sure we can handle it. Naruto said confidently. Yes, well, just in case, deactivate those eyes for now. I'd like to keep this under wraps. Naruto looked at the copy ninja curiously. Okay, how do I do that? You should be channeling chakra into your eyes to keep them activated. Really? Doesn't feel like I'm using any chakra. Try to cut the flow of chakra to you eyes anyway, just humor me. Naruto closed his eyes and tried to do as he was told. He closed his eyes and focused on cutting the flow of chakra to his eyes. When he opened them, he saw his vision was back to normal. He looked at his hands, seeing them in normal color and without chakra once more before speaking. Alright, back to normal. The blonde said with a grin. Kakashi deadpanned at him. Actually, they still look the same. What? Really? But everything looks normal again. Naruto asked in shock. Kakashi sighed. With a sigh, the Sharingan wielder stated. I get the feeling that's the best we're going to get. He then turned and began walking towards the others, gesturing for the blonde to follow. Come on, we'll have to figure out something later. After the celebrations were over, the shinobi all stayed at Tazuna's house. Zabuza was standing outside the building, looking up at the sky deep in thought. This wasn't the first time they had been double-crossed by an employer, though they did build a reputation of killing everyone who did so. That didn't stop some arrogant power-hungry fools like Gato from thinking they could pull it off. Truth was, his ambitions had long since become impossible, and he knew it. Hey, you. He turned to see the now purple-eyed blonde walking out of the house giving him a hard look, though it was hard to tell with the sunglasses he was wearing. After trying to turn off the dojutsu for a while longer, Kakashi eventually gave up and decided that either Naruto had too much chakra and not enough control, or they were like the Byakugan and their presence would be obvious even when inactive. After this, Kakashi got him the sunglasses to hide his new eyes. Huh, what do you want, kid? Do you care about Haku at all? Naruto asked angrily. HMPH, is that what's been bothering you all day? Kid, you're naive, that's how the ninja world works. Haku's nothing but a tool to me. You say that even after he was ready to give his life for you. Naruto almost yelled. After he lost, he asked me to kill him, all because he thought his loss meant he was of no further use to you. He respects and cares about you that much and you don't care at all. Quote. I can't stand the thought that someone as kind and loyal as Haku would give his life for someone who wouldn't care about it. Kid, stop talking. Naruto glared until he noticed the look in his eyes. We shinobi are still human. It's not easy to become an emotionless tool. It may be impossible. The masked nin said. Go back inside, I'm done talking. The next morning, it was the day they would set out. They were all eating breakfast at a table, except for Zabuza, who was leaning against a wall with his arms crossed. Sasuke seemed to occasionally glare at Naruto, but hadn't said anything. The Uchiha was intrigued by Naruto's dojutsu, but was also slightly upset about the outcome of the fight. He could still hardly believe that Naruto, the class clown, had managed to defeat an opponent that he couldn't, even if it was due to the blonde's bloodline. Naruto noticed Sasuke's glare and seemed annoyed but also didn't comment. Sakura was alternating between acting normal and swooning over Sasuke as usual, while Zabuza and Haku stayed silent. Hey, Zabuza. Naruto spoke up. What is it? The missing ninja asked, glancing at the blonde. Why'd you betray your village anyway? Were you really just that greedy, or was it something else? If you must know, I was trying to save my country. Zabuza said with a glare. He decided to indulge the brat due to the epiphany he helped him to the other night, but he really didn't like talking about this subject. You tried to save your village by taking it over, that seems like twisted logic, Zabuza. Kakashi replied, not believing it. Have you ever heard of the bloodline purges, Kakashi? This caused his eye to widen in realization while Sasuke's and Sakura's widened in shock. Naruto had heard of this already from Haku. Wait, bloodline purges. What's he talking about, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. Kakashi paused a moment before answering. Kiri has a long history of civil wars, because of the power they possess. Those who hold Kekkei Genkai like Haku's ice techniques, the Sharingan or Naruto's dojutsu were used as living weapons, to a far greater degree than other ninja, to destroy their enemies and inspire fear. The previous Mizukage, and many of the people of the Land of Water, came to see them as demons that brought war and suffering to them. After the wars were over, in an effort to prevent further tragedies, they slaughtered all those known to hold bloodlines. Kakashi explained, and all eyes, aside of course from those who already knew of this, widened in shock. My father murdered my mother, and tried to kill me because he discovered we held a Kekkei Genkai. Haku said, shocking them further, especially Sasuke. He had always been told being an Uchiha, having the Sharingan in his blood, made him special. To hear now that it would have demonized him in another country was an almost terrifying thought to the young Uchiha. I'm sorry to hear that. Kakashi said. It is fine, you had nothing to do with it. That's awful. Does that kind of thing happen often in the ninja world? Tsunami asked. No, but assassinations and kidnappings of those who hold Kekkei Genkai are common. They're powerful assets and dangerous enemies. Kakashi said. I trust you'll keep quiet about Naruto's dojutsu. The civilians nodded. I wanted to stop the fourth Mizukage's madness. Anyway, that doesn't matter now. There was a rebellion and they won. There's a new Mizukage and I hear whoever it is even has a Kekkei Genkai themselves. Zabuza said. Of course, I can't go back now. We were working with Gato to get the money to survive, not to try to take over the village again. Why don't you join another village? Kakashi asked. What village would take in someone who tried to kill their Kage? I could put in a good word for you with the old man. Naruto said. Old man, Haku asked. He has a kind of bond with the Hokage, kind of like a grandson to him from what I've seen, Kakashi said. Are you kidding me? This kid? Zabuza asked skeptically. I'm serious, he's also wise and tries to avoid bloodshed whenever possible. Also, Konoha's feelings on Kekkei Genkai are pretty much opposite Kiri's, Kakashi replied. Haku, what do you think? Zabuza said. I'd like to believe it, but. Fine, at this point, we don't really have much to lose. Zabuza finally said. Kakashi sighed. I know I'm going to hear about this later. Tazuna and his family, along with a single worker, stood across from the party of ninja on the bridge linking the country to the mainland. The bridge, which had been the only hope of their nation, had, after so long, finally been completed, and it was time for the Leaf Shinobi and the two missing nin to say their goodbyes to the recovering nation. I'd like to apologize again for aiding Gato. Haku said, bowing his head slightly. No problem, that's all water under the bridge. Thanks to all of you, in the end we completed the bridge and our land is free from that tyrant's clutches. But, it's sad to see you guys go. Tazuna said, resting his hand on Inari's head. Thanks for everything. Don't worry, we'll be sure to visit. Naruto grinned. You, better, Inari said, shaking with the effort of holding back his tears. Naruto's smile fell as he too struggled to hold back tears before his expression returned to a grin, though he continued shaking. You said, Inari. It's okay to cry, you know. I'm not going to cry. Inari yelled. But you can cry if you want to. Fine, later. Naruto replied, turning his back on Inari. Looking back at Naruto, one could see that, like Inari, he now had tears streaming from his eyes. Sakura looked at Naruto with a slightly annoyed expression. Geez, they're like twins. This kid's got a long way to go before he becomes a true shinobi, Zabuza thought. That boy, he changed Inari's heart. And Inari changed the people's hearts. That boy brought courage back to this nation, the bridge builder said as he watched the ninjas' retreating figures. Oh, yeah, we need to name this bridge, don't we? The worker asked. Well, I have a perfect name for it. Oh, what is it? Tsunami asked her father. How about the Great Naruto Bridge? Tazuna replied. The smiles from the others told him they agreed. That night, Team 7, Zabuza and Haku rested at a small camp, sitting around a campfire. What's Konoha like? Haku asked, glancing around the campfire. You said they see Kekkei Genkai as valuable. That's right, the philosophy is that every true Konoha shinobi must love, believe, cherish and fight for the village's sake, as many previous generations had done before them. Bloodlines are seen as a valuable tool for the shinobi possessing them that allow them to better protect the village, and as such are seen in a more positive light than in Kiri, where it's believed they exist solely to wage wars. Kakashi explained. I see, I must admit, I'm looking forward to seeing this. Haku said. I still find it hard to believe that your Hokage will give us a chance just like that. Zabuza spoke. Don't worry about it, you'll see, the old man's sure to help you guys. Naruto assured them confidently. Naruto. Sasuke's voice was heard the first time since they left Wave. It surprised Team 7 even more, since Sasuke rarely spoke to the blonde, out of all people. Huh, what do you want, Sasuke? Naruto turned to his teammate. Sasuke seemed to be more condescending to him than usual. Naruto was unaware of the reason behind it. Sasuke believed Naruto was becoming stronger than him. Part of him found it unacceptable while the other side refused to acknowledge the possibility. How did you beat Haku? Sasuke asked. Naruto stared into the campfire, trying once again to recall the events of the battle in vain. After a moment, the blonde replied. I don't know. Sasuke's eyes narrowed and Sakura's raised an eyebrow at the blonde. What do you mean? How can you not remember winning the fight? Just that, after it looked like Sasuke died, I blacked out. I guess that was the same time my bloodline activated. When I came to, I was about to kill Haku. Everything between that time was a blur. I believe he instinctually called upon the genetic memory of his dojutsu. It overwhelmed him and he fought purely on that instinct. Kakashi explained his theory. Huh, never heard of something like that happening with a dojutsu before. Zabuza commented as he turned to the copy ninja. Neither have I, Kakashi agreed. But it's the only explanation I can think of. What did it do to him? Sasuke asked the older boy, wanting to learn more about Naruto's power. Haku's eyes narrowed, not wanting to think back to his near death. A few moments after I put you into a false death, he stood up, already overwhelmed by his bloodline. He was suddenly able to keep up with me, most likely by channeling chakra into his legs, though I don't think that alone could account for the difference in speed. I think his eyes allowed him to follow my every move and he had access to jutsu I'd never seen before. What jutsu? Sasuke inquired. I saw two, possibly three. The first he used to create a barrier of some sort. My needles were useless. The second allowed him to pull me in. I tried to reach one of my mirrors when I suddenly found myself pulled through the air towards him. I was powerless to defend myself at that time. The third, though I believe it may have been a variation of the barrier, sent out a wave of force strong enough to shatter one of my mirrors. I believe it was the same technique you used to save us. Haku explained, turning to Naruto at the last part. Sasuke's hands clenched. This dojutsu of Naruto's may even be as strong as the Mangekyo. Do you know how you did that, Naruto? Kakashi asked. Naruto looked down at his hand, remembering the power he felt and shook his head. No. Well, I must admit, I'm curious about this bloodline of yours. Kakashi mused. Perhaps Lord Hokage will know more about it. At their position guarding the gate of Konoha, Kotetsu sighed as he looked out to the empty road. It was another lazy day for the two Chunin who usually guarded the gates. Though Azuma was perfectly content with this, Kotetsu was a little irritated at the monotony of guarding a gate day in and day out and was considering suggesting they take a mission for a change. Looks like another boring day on guard duty. Kotetsu said. You shouldn't complain about it. The pay's good and there's no real risk. Besides, would you rather we be under attack or something? Azuma replied. I guess you're right. Still, I wish something interesting would happen for a change. Minutes later, Team 7 along with Zabuza and Haku approached Konoha. As the group was walking towards the gate, the guards at first moved to greet them, but stopped when they saw Zabuza and instead stared in stunned silence of the infamous demon ninja of the mist. Hey, guys, what's up with you? Naruto looked at them with raised brows. These were two people he knew fairly that didn't see him as a demon. You guys know who that is behind you, right? Kotetsu asked, slightly on guard. Yeah, he wants to join the village. Naruto replied. Both looked down at the blonde in shock before Azuma voiced their thoughts. Are you serious? HMPH, nice to see my reputation precedes me, but do you think I could fool someone like Kakashi that easily? Zabuza said. Believe it or not, he's being sincere. If the Hokage is willing, he and his protege here will be joining our village. Kakashi said. Now, if you'll excuse us, we really should give our mission report. As you can see, we have a lot to talk about. And I'm going to be scolded for not coming back or asking for reinforcements when the mission was upgraded to an A- rank, and for bringing Zabuza here, knowing how Kiri will take it, oh, and probably for teaching them so little too, joy. With that, the group headed off towards the Hokage Tower. The guards were so stunned they didn't even question Naruto's sunglasses. Well, you got what you asked for. Azuma said, still a little shocked. Kotetsu blinked before looking to the sky. Yeah, think it'll work if I ask for a bonus. Azuma shook his head. Not a chance. Kotetsu sighed before propping his arm on the table and resting his head on his hand. That's what I thought. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, known as the Professor and the God of Shinobi, the only one to hold that title since the Sage of the Six Paths, for his prowess and mastery of the ninja arts, sat at his desk facing a never-ending battle against the most persistent enemy of all Kage, paperwork. While it wasn't as bad as most believed, it still took up a lot of their time. Lord Hokage. His assistant, a kunoichi in her early 20s with black hair, stepped into the room, seeming slightly nervous. Hiruzen raised a brow as he noticed how tense she was. Yes, what seems to be the matter? Team 7 has returned, she replied. His expression didn't change. Since that didn't answer his question, that wouldn't be enough to make her nervous. And, Zabuza Momochi's with them, it seems he wishes to join Konoha. The old man's eyes widened at this. How could they have encountered someone like that on a C-rank mission? And why would Kakashi believe he would be a loyal Konoha ninja? I see. Send them in, he ordered as he sat back in his chair, hands clasped on his desk. She gave the group the okay to enter and left the room after they did. That's the god of shinobi. He looks like he should be in a retirement home, Zabuza thought. Then again, that says nothing about his skill. Haku doesn't exactly look menacing either. Hey, old man, Naruto said, grinning as he saw his grandfather figure. Welcome back, Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and you as well, Kakashi, the old man said with a smile which fell into a more serious expression as his gaze turned to the missing nin. I must admit, I was a bit surprised to hear you wish to join our village. Yeah, make that two of us. Part of me can't believe I'm actually here, Zabuza replied. I'd imagine so. Kiri and Konoha are very different, as you may find out soon enough, depending on the outcome of this meeting. Kakashi, I have to ask how you came across the demon of the mist and this boy, who I assume is with him. Yes, well, it seems Tazuna lied to us about the scope of the mission. It was more like an A- rank. Kakashi explained. Hiruzen's eyes hardened when he heard that. There was a tense pause before the professor spoke up. I'm sorry, I must have misheard you. I thought you said this mission was upgraded to an A- rank. Heh, I'm afraid you heard right. Kakashi gave a nervous eye smile. I'm going to have to ask you to elaborate, the Hokage said. A while later, Hiruzen sighed at having heard the full scope of the mission, and why Kakashi decided to give Zabuza a chance. He should have known something like this would happen. Things with Naruto always seem to become complicated. How did all of this come from a simple C-rank mission? Hiruzen sighed again. Although I have to disagree with your course of action, what's done is done now. Naruto started, surprised. He had thought that the old man would be proud of them. But they couldn't afford anything else. You can't be saying we should have just left them to deal with it. Of course not. Had we known about the state of their country, we could have worked out some way for them to compensate us in the future. Perhaps an IOU to be paid when the country was back on its feet, or a trade agreement, rather than risking the lives of 3 newly graduated genin. At the very least, we could have sent backup. Wait, these 3 are fresh out of the academy. Zabuza gestured toward the genin, obviously surprised. Kakashi, what did you teach them? He'd been impressed that Sasuke was able to hold his own against Haku, even forcing him to use his trump card, and that Naruto had actually managed to pull one over on him. To hear they were fresh out of the academy was startling. Here we go, well, tree climbing, and some teamwork exercises. Is that all? Zabuza asked incredulously, and Kakashi I smiled and chuckled sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. Both Zabuza and the third stared at the man. Kakashi, that's all you taught them, and you brought them on a mission of A-rank difficulty? The third asked. Well, actually, I taught them tree climbing in wave. You've gotta be kidding me. Zabuza shook his head and face palmed while Hiruzen glared at the silver-haired Jonin. Kakashi, we will have to talk about your teaching methods, the Hokage said before turning to the former Mist Ninja. In the meantime, tell me why I should consider your request, considering your previous actions. Apparently, Zabuza staged his coup in an attempt to halt the 4th Mizukage's bloodline purge. Kakashi said, and Hiruzen raised a brow. Yes, it's true, those sordid affairs did occur around the time of your betrayal, Hiruzen mused, stroking his beard in thought. I take it the purges were as bad as our information would suggest. Zabuza scoffed. Probably worse. Yugura managed to convince everyone that bloodline holders may as well have been true demons in human form. If a bloodline holder was found, they would be ruthlessly slaughtered, whether they were ninja or untrained civilian carriers. You could kill an infant if he bore a bloodline and get 15 minutes of fame. I've seen that happen, firsthand. The three genin looked in horror at that, while Hiruzen and Kakashi's eyes narrowed and Haku cringed, going back to the day his mother was murdered. Not only was it an atrocity, it was tearing our country apart. Those who could see the truth began to rebel against the fourth Mizukage's regime. I just happened to be at the forefront. Haku stepped forward. As you have been told, I bear the ice element Kekkei Genkei and am quite possibly the last of the Yuki clan. My mother hid herself as a civilian and married my father, a simple farmer. We were happy, until I discovered my bloodline and my father discovered us. He led the people of my village to murder me and my mother. I watched him kill her and then try to kill me. I survived only because my bloodline activated subconsciously and killed everyone left in the house. We lived on the outskirts of the village. I escaped before the rest of the villagers knew what happened and wandered the country until Zabuza found me and took me in. Do you have any idea what led the Mizukage to act in such a manner? My encounters with Yugura beforehand led me to believe he was a kind and just man. Hiruzen said. Zabuza's eyes narrowed as he thought back to those days. That was the odd thing. No one does. The change was gradual, but there was something odd. He definitely wasn't the man we once called our Mizukage when the purges began. Some thought he was being controlled, maybe by some powerful genjutsu, but as far as I know there was never any proof. Hiruzen was silent for a few moments, closing his eyes as he considered what he'd heard before opening them and looking at Zabuza. What you've told me matched what I've heard. In light of this information, we will have to discuss those events further at a later date, but I will give you a chance. Though Zabuza will have a 6-month probationary period and will be unable to take missions outside the village for the span of 1 year, you will be allowed to join the village. Zabuza nodded and Hiruzen turned to Haku. As for you, since you were not an official ninja, but were loyal to one, your probationary period will be half your mentor's and, if you wish, you will be allowed to restart the Yuki clan here. Thank you, Lord Hokage. Haku bowed. We will have to gauge your skills later to see exactly what rank you will receive. Hiruzen said to the androgynous teen who nodded. Were there any other noteworthy events over the course of this mission? Yes, Sasuke activated the Sharingan during the mission, but Naruto also unlocked a dojutsu I can't identify. Kakashi said and the third blinked. I see, that's a surprise, I assume that's why you're wearing those sunglasses. The Hokage responded and Naruto nodded. Well, let's see it. Naruto removed his sunglasses and opened his eyes, revealing the purple, ringed dojutsu to the Hokage. Hiruzen gasped, his eyes wide as he stood up in disbelief at the sight before him. I don't believe it. What is it? You know what they are? Sakura asked. Yes, the Rinnegan. The Hokage replied, surprising everyone present, aside Naruto who had never heard of that. The same eyes as the sage, are you sure, old man? Zabuza asked. I'm sure. Hiruzen nodded as he sat behind his desk again. Naruto looked slightly confused. Wait, what's so special about my eyes? He asked, not understanding why they were such a big deal. And who's this sage? The sage of the 6 paths. He was the first, and supposedly, most powerful shinobi who ever lived. He created the ninja arts and was a bearer of the same dojutsu you have. Kakashi answered. But though I assumed the eyes were real, I believe the man was just a myth. I assure you, he was real, but he lived over 2,000 years ago, there is little known of him now, the third said. Naruto, the Rinnegan is the greatest of the 3 great dojutsu. Certainly one of the most powerful bloodlines in existence. A grin grew across Naruto's face and he pumped his fist. Really? I knew I was awesome, Naruto. Hiruzen interrupted. This is no laughing matter. If word of this reaches the other villages or certain individuals, they will stop at nothing to kill or capture you. That stopped Naruto in his tracks, freezing in place with wide eyes. The fact that you possess those eyes is an S-rank secret. Understood. All the ninja present nodded. Lord Hokage, Naruto can't change his eyes back. Sakura said. Is there some reason why he can't or? Unfortunately, from what I know the Rinnegan is permanently active. Once awakened, there is no way to return the user's eyes to normal. Hiruzen explained. What? You mean my eyes are going to look like this forever? Naruto asked, surprised. I'm afraid so. The old man replied. Lord Hokage, how did you recognize the Rinnegan? Kakashi asked. A student of mine, Jiraiya, trained a Rinnegan user in AIM years ago. He told me about it. That aside, I'm not called the professor for nothing. I know of many legends, and though there are various different accounts on its abilities, its description is constant in all the legends. The third replied, and Naruto looked excited. Wait, if these bloodlines travel through families, then we must be related. Can you contact him for me or? Naruto said, excited about the possibility of meeting family for the first time, only to be cut off when the Hokage shook his head. I'm sorry Naruto, I was told he died many years ago, before I even knew of him. Hiruzen said sadly, fearful that certain elements in Konoha would find out, such as Danzo. Jiraiya had kept knowledge of his Rinnegan-bearing student to himself until he heard of his death. The blonde's mood immediately dropped. Oh, was all he could say. It tore at the old man's heartstrings to see his surrogate grandson's hopes rise so, only to be dashed by reality. I wasn't told much about the Rinnegan's abilities. I'll ask Jiraiya to return to the village to aid you. According to my information, he was planning on returning around the time of the Chunin exams anyway. Chunin exams? Sakura parroted. Exactly what it sounds like, a series of tests meant to see if you're worthy of being promoted to Chunin. I intend to nominate you for them. Kakashi explained. Hiruzen glared at the former Anbu captain. Not if that's all you've taught them so far. From the fact that they survived this mission, I'm sure they've improved on their own since they graduated, but that alone isn't enough to prepare them. Kakashi cringed slightly at that. Well, at least I have 2 months to make up for that, Kakashi said, ignoring Naruto and Sasuke's scowls for almost costing them the chance to progress. Sakura was significantly less upset. So, who's this Jiraiya anyway? Naruto asked. Kakashi turned to the young Jinchuriki. Lord Jiraiya, along with Lady Tsunade and Orochimaru, are known as the 3 legendary Sannin. They're Lord Hokage's former students. Zabuza shook his head in disbelief. I can't believe you don't even know of renowned shinobi of your own village. Those are 3 of the strongest ninja alive, but years ago, Orochimaru betrayed your village. The third Hokage sat back in his chair as he thought of his scattered students. Yes, he was my star pupil, but he was always ambitious. His lust for power and immortality eventually consumed him, and he committed unspeakable crimes against the village. It's common knowledge that Jiraiya runs our spy network and, as for Tsunade, he said, sighing at the end. Though she is not a missing nin and is still loosely affiliated with us, she left the village and currently has no intentions of returning for reasons that are her own. He then looked up. If there's nothing else, I must have words with Kakashi. Zabuza, might I make a request? I want you to aid Kakashi with teaching these 3 while you're on probation, at least until the exams begin. Hiruzen then turned to Kakashi. It's not that I've lost faith in your teaching abilities, Kakashi, but with Sasuke possessing the Sharingan, your team will be a target to other villages and people like my wayward student. Even more so if and when knowledge of the Rinnegan gets out, and you seem to be a good teacher, considering the skill young Haku has. Rest assured you will be compensated. I understand, Lord Hokage. Kakashi replied. Not like I'll have anything better to do, and I do owe them, I guess. Zabuza said. Naruto looked excited to learn from another powerful ninja. Sasuke smirked slightly, sure this would help him fulfill his goal, and Sakura paled at the thought of being trained by the demon ninja of the mist. Wait a minute, old man, what do you know about my family? Naruto asked. He had asked the old man before, but he had always told him he couldn't tell him. You always said you couldn't tell me, why? Was it because of my bloodline? Your bloodline had nothing to do with it. Suffice it to say, no one on either side of your family ever exhibited this dojutsu before. You were never told because your father made many enemies. If word got out you were his son, the same individuals would stop at nothing to kill you for revenge. He said before considering the new developments, specifically Naruto's dojutsu. Though with your other secrets, that wouldn't change much, to be honest. Very well. Naruto, I was planning to wait until you were 16, but if you pass the upcoming Chunin exams, I'll tell you everything about them. Is that alright? Yeah, I guess that just gives me more reason to pass. You'll see, in 2 months, I'll be the awesome ninja I'm meant to be, and then you'll tell me everything. Hiruzen smiled. Good, now, you are all dismissed. His smile was replaced into a glare worthy of his title as his eyes turned to the copy ninja. Except for you, Kakashi. He then looked to the ex-mist ninja. Zabuza, Haku, my Anbu will find you and take you to an assigned apartment. Here are your new forehead protectors. Hiruzen said as he handed the Pear Leaf Village forehead protectors. Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke. Since your team brought them here, I'll ask that you show them around the village. The three nodded, Sasuke obviously unhappy about the order, and left. Kakashi paled slightly as he was left in the room with the second god of shinobi, who was glaring daggers at him. In the absence of their sensei, Team 7 along with Zabuza and his apprentice stepped out of the administration building, the ex-missing nin now wearing Konoha forehead protectors. Having nowhere to go, Zabuza swept his eyes over the village, unlike when he had been on his way to the Hokage's office, where he had noted defenses and the Anbu following them. He truly took in the sight of the village. Well, this place is a hell of a lot more peaceful than Kiri, that's for sure. Zabuza noted. Sakura turned to the man, who still intimidated her a little. What do you mean? Zabuza shrugged. Even before the fourth Mizukage went batshit on bloodline holders, there was always a tenseness, a sense of threat that Konoha doesn't have. So, let's get started. There's a lot to show you. Naruto said. With that, the three genin showed the two new citizens of Konoha around their new home. Over the course of their tour, Zabuza and Haku, of course, noticed the looks of shock they were getting, but were more surprised at the looks that were directed towards Naruto. Haku was reminded of his time in Kiri, remembering the glares directed at him by those who knew he held a bloodline. Zabuza, on the other hand, remembered similar looks directed towards the fourth Mizukage. As they were walking down a particular street, Zabuza glanced at the blonde. There weren't many other reasons why a child would be treated this way in his own village, especially one as peaceful as Konoha. Just about every ninja knew of the Kyuubi's attack, and the boy in front of him seemed to be the right age. It added more substance to his theory when his hearing, honed by his mastery of the art of silent killing, overheard whispers of Fox Boy and other similar names from the villagers. He had to admit, he was intrigued if he was right. The power of a Jinchuriki combined with the Rinnegan. There would be no limits to the boy's potential if his suspicions were correct. Sakura and Sasuke also noticed the glares the blonde received. They rarely saw him outside the academy or team meetings, so this was the first time they'd noticed how the people of the village looked at him. Sasuke was slightly intrigued but for the most part didn't care. Sakura found herself curious as well about why he was being glared at, though she soon dismissed it as the result of one too many pranks. Hey, kid, are there any good places to eat around here? Zabuza asked as their tour neared its end. Naruto grinned, the thought of his favorite food was almost always enough to lift his mood. I know a great place. Hey, how about we all go there to celebrate? Sakura smiled and turned to Sasuke, but before she could say anything, Sasuke scoffed and turned away. Not interested. the Uchiha said as he started towards his compound, his hands in his pockets, an aloof expression on his face. He wanted nothing more than to return to his home. The revelation that the Sharingan wasn't the most powerful dojutsu in the village anymore, he was certain his clan's dojutsu was superior to the Hyuga's Byakugan, and vice versa, let alone that the more powerful dojutsu belonged to the dead last of all people, not to mention the events in Wave, had increased his desire for power tenfold. He was determined not to let Naruto surpass him, Rinnegan or not. Come on, Sasuke, it's my treat. Naruto called out. Sakura turned to the blonde, obviously surprised. You actually want him to come with us? Naruto looked to the ground and narrowed his eyes. It was obvious he didn't particularly want Sasuke to come along. Well, he did take about 100 needles for me. I think I kind of owe him. Naruto replied. Haku looked away nervously at that. Sasuke didn't seem to care. First of all, why should I waste my time? Secondly, if you owed me, I wouldn't squander a favor on something frivolous like this anyway. Naruto glared at Sasuke's retreating figure. Fine then, be that way. He then turned to Sakura hopefully. Sakura, want to come? Well, Sakura began. Hang on a moment. A familiar voice called out. The three genin, Haku and Zabuza turned in the direction of the voice to see Kakashi appear in a body flicker. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said. Zabuza smirked behind the bandages that masked his face. Hey, old man, done chewing you out, Kakashi. The other masked ninja didn't respond to that. Kakashi nonchalantly turned to his fellow masked ninja. Huh, you say something, Zabuza. Far away, Guy felt the urge to curse his eternal rival's hip attitude and challenge him once again. Zabuza simply scoffed. Sasuke turned away. Unless you're going to suggest we start training, I'm not interested. Kakashi turned to the last Uchiha in Konoha. Hold on, I've got something I need to say to all of you. Sasuke stood still for a moment before turning around and facing him. Naruto and Sakura were already giving him their attention. Alright, listen up. I know I haven't been serious about teaching you until now. By all accounts, I should have taught you the tree climbing exercise long before our trip to Wave. Lord Hokage made it clear he won't tolerate that kind of negligence on my part anymore, and I'm sorry for neglecting you the way I have. The copy ninja said, pausing for a moment and letting his words sink in. Starting tomorrow, your training will begin in earnest. There won't be much time to devote to team building exercises, but I want you three to work as a more cohesive unit. I think spending more time together, or any time together at all, outside our training would be a good start. He then turned to Sasuke, the look in his eye leaving no room for arguments. So, we will be getting something to eat together, and no, Sasuke, this is not negotiable. Sasuke simply scoffed, but returned to the group. Good, now, Kakashi then turned to the Rinnegan bearer, giving him his eye smile. Since Naruto was so kind as to offer, our meal will be on him, so the least we can do is let him decide where we eat. Naruto grumbled and Sakura smiled and playfully stuck her tongue out at him. Zabuza smirked under his mask and even Sasuke grinned slightly at the blonde's misfortune. Zabuza raised an eyebrow. A ramen bar. Naruto had led the group to his favorite eatery, the Ichiraku ramen bar. Kakashi sighed. I should have known, he practically lives off of this stuff. Naruto ran into his favorite eatery with his toothy grin. Hey, old man, how've things been? Naruto. Good to see you. Tsuki smiled at his favorite customer. His daughter, the ramen waitress Ayame, joined him, smiling at the return of the blonde, who she considered family. Hey, Naruto, where've you been? Did you just get back from a mission? Yep. Me and my team are showing these guys around the village. Naruto said, gesturing towards the others who were entering the bar behind him. Tsuki looked surprised to see Zabuza. He may not have known who he was, but it was obvious the man was a powerful ninja. That's so. Well, what do you think of our village so far? Zabuza shrugged. Nice place. Though it doesn't have the feel of a ninja village, if you ask me. It's too relaxed around here. Kakashi turned to his fellow Jonin as he entered the bar. Well, that's some of the appeal of our village. Ayame, curiosity overcoming her, had to ask. So, is there any particular reason why you're the ones showing them around? Naruto was first to answer the question and soon he, along with Sakura and occasional input from Kakashi, Zabuza and Haku began to explain the details of their mission, leaving out some sensitive topics such as Naruto's eyes of course, as the stand owners took their orders and brought their food. By the time they were finished with the explanation, 3 of the teens were halfway through their first bowls. Zabuza and Kakashi had somehow finished theirs and replaced their masks quickly enough so that no one could peek, and Naruto was on his 4th. Wow, you're just starting out and you get a mission like that? Ayame asked in shock. It was obvious to anyone, ninja or not, that the team had gotten in over their heads. Yep. Amazing, huh? Our first real mission and we save an entire country. I always said I'd be an awesome ninja. Naruto grinned. Well, congratulations. To celebrate, and to welcome our new citizens, all of your first bowls on the house. Tyuki announced. Haku looked up, slightly surprised by Tyuki's generosity. Really? That's very generous of you. Are you sure that's alright? Tyuki waved off his concerns. Don't worry about it. Like I said, it's my way of welcoming you to the village. Besides, Naruto will more than make up for it. Zabuza glanced at the blonde, who had just started his 5th bowl with no less enthusiasm than his first. Yeah, and then some. You weren't kidding about him living off of this stuff, I see. Hey, Kakashi. Sasuke spoke up for the first time since they got there. What are the Chunin exams like? Well, Kakashi began, his students looking at him anxiously. I can't say. What? Oh, come on, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto complained. Kakashi chuckled and I smiled at the blonde. It wouldn't be very fair if I told you, now would it? Naruto turned to Haku. I take it you never took one of the exams, did you? The older teen replied that he hadn't, and the blonde turned to the demon of the mist. Well, what about you then, Zabuza? Any info on what we'll be up against? Even if I wanted to tell you, kid, I wouldn't know. The exams are always different and vary depending on which village it's held in. Zabuza replied. I guess it's to be expected they're not the same every time, noted Sakura, slightly disappointed. Though she wasn't particularly enthusiastic about it, if her teammates, especially Sasuke, wanted to go through with it, so would she. Wait, it's not always in our village. Kakashi shook his head. Most allied or neutral villages send genin to participate in the exams. They should arrive just before they begin. The exams are held in one of the participating villages. You're in luck, it's our village's turn this time around. Why are we taking our exams with foreign ninja? Sakura asked. That'll be explained during the exam. Kakashi replied. How are exams in the same villages different? Inquired Sasuke. Well, the proctor, a jonin or special jonin from the hosting village, decides on the tests. Of course, different proctors means entirely different tests and they make sure to never give repeat performances. Kakashi replied. Sasuke nodded, satisfied by the information. I can tell you this much. Everyone sent to participate in the exam will be skilled ninja in their own right. Many elites among genin from all over the elemental nations will be participating. It won't be easy for you. Sakura looked a little nervous while Naruto looked excited, as did Sasuke, though one could only barely tell. Fortunately, I intend to make sure you 3 are ready when the time comes. That night, Sasuke walked into the secret area in the Naka Shrine, his clan's secret meeting place. He had to admit, he was a little anxious to do this, to see the secrets of his deceased clan. Itachi had instructed him to discover those secrets on that terrible night all those years ago, but he'd been unable to. It hadn't taken him long to figure out the Sharingan was necessary to decipher what was written there. For years, the information contained on it eluded him, But now he finally had what he needed. As he stepped into the secret meeting place in the Naka shrine, he briefly glanced at the tapestries on the walls of the room before his eyes turned to the tablet that held all the secrets of his clan. He grinned as he activated his Sharingan and began to read, soaking up the knowledge left behind by his nearly extinct clan. Minutes later, his expression fell into a scowl. Though many of the previously indecipherable secrets of his clan were now clear as day to him, a lot was still impossible to read. Apparently, the basic Sharingan could only translate so much. He'd need the Mangekyo to read more, though what he had discovered had been interesting, to say the least. The Sharingan possessed a power he'd never suspected. The power to control the nine-tailed demon fox. It also revealed some facts about the beast. Most notably, that it couldn't truly be killed. So then, how did the fourth Hokage defeat it? Not that it really mattered to him. That power would be of no use against Itachi, who had a more powerful Sharingan, anyway. Still, it made him curious how his clan was linked to the fox. Naruto stood in his apartment bathroom, looking at his reflection, the purple-ringed eyes he'd have to live with for the rest of his life staring back at him. Channeling chakra them, his vision once more became black and white as his eyes activated. He raised his hand and looked at his arm, faintly seeing the chakra coursing through his arm and seeing it clearly around the extremity like blue fire. He deactivated his eyes, letting color return to his vision, and thought about everything he had learned over the course of the day. He thought about the offer made by the old man he considered a grandfather, pass and become a chunin and learn about his family. As he thought about that, his mind flashed back to the academy, his constant losses and his and Sasuke's battle with Haku, and he grimaced. Alone, he allowed his mask of confidence fall as he recalled his failures and how completely outclassed he was by Haku. He couldn't afford to risk screwing this up. One of the things he had always wanted to know, the truth about the family he never had, was at stake. Starting tomorrow, he would take being a ninja seriously. If he let this chance pass him by, he'd never forgive himself. Zabuza and Haku stepped into the apartment they had been assigned after finishing the first of several interviews they would have with the Hokage, which would end in full mental and physical evaluations. They would be allowed to keep some things to themselves, but they would have to reveal several secrets of their homeland and basically everything about their time wandering the nations, but this was to be expected. The two ex-missing ninja inspected the home with a critical eye as the Anbu who had shown them to it departed. It was a decent two-bedroom apartment. Well, it's better than sleeping in the woods, that's for sure. Zabuza noted and Haku nodded. So, this place everything you hoped it'd be? Yes. From what I've seen, the village is much like they described. Haku answered. Yeah, from what I've seen, you should feel right at home. This place fits your ideals. Zabuza replied. It was a bit too peaceful for him, but he'd adjust. It was better than wandering from place to place with no real future. Although, Haku began and Zabuza glanced at him. The way they looked at Naruto, it reminded me of the glares I received that day. Zabuza knew he was referring to the day his parents died. This land is much more peaceful than our homeland, and its people seem welcoming. Why would they treat the boy in such a way? I have a hunch. Zabuza replied. It's become common knowledge for those around at the time that around 12 years ago, the nine-tailed demon fox attacked this village. It could be that he's the same as Yagura. Haku's eyes widened in shock. Well, either that or his old man did something he's being blamed for. Either way, if it matters, we'll find out soon enough. You have a point. Though, it's depressing to think such prejudice exists, even in a village like this one. Zabuza didn't respond as he continued inspecting the apartment. The next day, the three genin of Team 7, Zabuza and Haku, all stood around the posts of the third training ground. Zabuza leaned against a tree with his arms crossed, his eyes narrowed in annoyance. We've been here for half an hour. How long does this bastard expect to keep us waiting? Zabuza growled. You should probably get used to it. Kakashi-sensei's always like this. Sakura commented. Yeah, he'll probably be here in an hour or two with some lame excuse like, a black cat crossed my path. Naruto added. You're joking. Haku stated as he and Zabuza looked skeptically at the genin. Sasuke scoffed. If only. Between this and his antics, I had a hard time believing the guy was a jonin until I saw him fight. Well, screw waiting around, Zabuza said, as he stepped away from the tree. He then grabbed the hilt of his sword. I was planning on testing you three to see exactly what I was working with anyway. Since Kakashi can't be bothered to be on time, let's get started right now. Sakura paled while Naruto grinned and Sasuke smirked. Good, I've been waiting for this since we left Wave. Naruto said. Do you want me to participate? Haku asked his father figure. No, Haku. Just watch and analyze their abilities. Haku nodded and vanished in a burst of speed, reappearing on the branch of a tree, placing his hand on the trunk as he looked at the four. Alright, show me what you three can do. Don't expect me to hold back just because you're brats. Kakashi arrived at the training ground, about 2 hours earlier than he would have prior to his admonishment at the hands of the third, to find Zabuza standing over the fairly beaten forms of Naruto and Sakura, with Sasuke trapped over the nearby stream in a water prison held by a clone, glaring at the real former Miss Jonin. Zabuza sighed. You guys have a long way to go, still I suppose 2 of you could make it through the exams as you are now, if you're lucky. The missing nin then turned to Sakura, who was still laying on the ground. You on the other hand, unless you work your off for the next 2 months, you won't have to worry about passing. You'll be more concerned about surviving. Looks like I arrived at a good time. Kakashi commented, ignoring Zabuza's glare as he strolled into the training field. Where the hell have you been? You kept us waiting so long, we got started without you. Zabuza growled, annoyed with Kakashi and with how much work 2 of the genin would need. As he said these words, his clone dispelled, falling apart into water along with Sasuke, who, as he hadn't mastered water walking, fell into the water and began to swim to his team. Well, a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way. From there, I'm afraid I got lost on the road of life until I found myself here. Zabuza's eye twitched in annoyance. Anyway, I got something that I thought would be useful on the way. So, how'd they do? Zabuza scoffed. Quite frankly, Kakashi, they suck. He then gestured towards Sasuke, who had just reached the shore. The Uchiha brat's alright. He's got a good balance of ninjutsu and taijutsu and his Sharingan let him follow my moves. Lot of good that does if he can't keep up with his opponent, though. He's lucky Haku tried so hard not to kill him back at the bridge. Sasuke, who had just climbed out of the water, grit his teeth but knew he was right. Kakashi nodded as the 2 dry genin of his team sat up. Your thoughts on Sakura? Zabuza deadpanned. She's a fangirl who's completely useless in a fight. I really have to question your village's standards for letting her graduate. She has no unique talents and her taijutsu's pathetic. Hey, take that back. Sakura yelled indignantly, insulted enough to voice her objection, despite still being slightly afraid of the man who almost killed her team. Yeah, don't say things like that about her. Naruto yelled. Although she found him annoying, Sakura was grateful Naruto had her back. Girl, the other 2 at least put up a decent fight. You didn't last 5 seconds once I turned to you. Zabuza said simply. Do you train at all outside of what Kakashi required of you, which from what I've heard has been minimal? Have you really tried to improve yourself as a ninja at all since you graduated? Did you actually contribute to your team at all back at Wave? Sakura looked crestfallen as she couldn't refute his statements. I rest my case. Listen closely, they say a team is only as strong as its weakest link. Although that's not entirely the case, when one individual has mediocre skill, the rest of the group has to make up for it, lowering success, and more importantly, survival rates. Ninja like you tend to bring the whole team down, either by not contributing, or being targeted and likely captured when the enemy recognizes their lack of talent and singles them out. Unless you improve, you're a liability that could get your entire team killed one day. Sakura's mood continued to sink like a stone in a vast ocean of despair. Kakashi quickly decided to reassure his student. Now, don't worry, Sakura. You can still become a splendid kunoichi. It'll just take some work. Yeah, a lot of work. Zabuza added bluntly. Alright, what are her strengths? Well, she has an untapped talent for genjutsu and natural near-perfect chakra control. She was able to get the tree climbing exercise on the first try. She also had the highest written test scores back at the academy and has decent analytical skills. Kakashi explained. Though those tend to go out the window whenever Sasuke's involved. Zabuza scoffed. Those tests mean nothing in the field. Although, we could work with that intellect. Haku stepped forward. If she is good at memorizing facts, I could teach her what I know of the human body as well as medicinal herbs. I'm sure she'd also excel in the creation and use of poisons. If you know of someone with the talent, if she manages to memorize the human body, she'll likely make a good medical ninja. A field I myself am interested in, but was never able to find a proper teacher for. Naruto looked slightly confused. Medical ninja? What? You mean first aid? Why would she need a teacher for that? A medical ninja is someone trained to use chakra to heal injuries. The most skilled among them can even heal life-threatening injuries in moments on the battlefield, though it consumes a lot of chakra. Kakashi explained. I was also thinking she could make a good medical ninja. She reminds me a lot of one I knew. Kakashi trailed off, remembering Rin, which led him to think about his lost team. His years as a shinobi and natural aloofness allowed him to perfectly mask his sense of melancholy that came with them. Wow, that sounds awesome. Naruto grinned. He knew he wouldn't really need something like that, even he knew his healing wasn't normal. But he could see how useful such an ability would be. You might go farther than I thought. Sasuke spoke up. Sakura was torn between being happy Sasuke thought there might be hope for her or sad that he obviously thought little of her current abilities. She decided on the former, as Zabuza's earlier statements had made her somewhat realize that, at the moment, she was indeed largely useless. Of course, we'll have to work on her stamina, too, Kakashi said. As for the blonde brat, Zabuza gestured towards the Jinchuriki. The kid has a knack for coming up with unpredictable strategies and his taijutsus, passable, but aside from that and the clones, his stamina and his dojutsu, which he doesn't know how to use yet, he's got nothing going for him, not to mention the fact that outside of strategies, he's not the fastest deer in the forest. Hey! Naruto yelled indignantly, raising a fist into the air. Sasuke, blunt as ever, stated, Naruto, you're the dead last of our class. Weeks ago, I remember you didn't even know the proper spelling of chakra. Naruto growled, but Kakashi spoke up before he could respond. Yes, well, I have something in mind that will take care of that. Well, I hope whatever you've got in mind works. Kid's not going to make it far as a ninja at this rate. Zabuza commented before turning to Naruto. And why didn't you try using those eyes of yours? Naruto, still irritated at Zabuza's evaluation, replied, I can't use them and clones in the same time and I don't know how to use their powers yet. I figured I was better off sticking with what I knew. Maybe you're a little smarter than I gave you credit for. Using a power you're not familiar with is a good way to wind up dead. Zabuza's eyes narrowed after giving the back-handed compliment. Wait, what do you mean you can't use them in your clones? Naruto shrugged. Whenever I use them both, I see out of my clone's eyes too. Seeing everything like that makes my head spin. Kakashi stepped forward, intrigued. Is that so? Interesting. I want to see this. Activate your dojutsu and create a shadow clone. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes, channeling chakra into them, before opening them. He then made a cross-shaped hand seal and called out the name of his most used jutsu, causing a single clone to appear in a poof of smoke. The two Narutos already seemed slightly disoriented, though not enough that it would keep them from fighting, and the others looked on, obviously interested in finding out anything about the eyes. Now, close your eyes, just the real you. Naruto did as told. Now, tell me, how many fingers am I holding up? He said, holding up 2 fingers. When the clone opened his mouth, Kakashi stated, the real you. 2. Naruto immediately said, despite having his eyes closed. Kakashi raised a brow before holding up 4 fingers. 4. He said as Zabuza picked up a rock. Kakashi put down 1 finger. 3. Zabuza then threw the rock at the blonde's head. Naruto saw it through his clone's vision and caught it, opening his eyes and glaring at the former Kiri ninja. Hey, what gives, Zabuza-sensei? Zabuza smirked beneath his mask. Just another test for ya, kid. Naruto's glare intensified. Besides, I was hoping to show the usefulness of that ability. So, do you see how this could increase your effectiveness? Huh, Naruto replied, before thinking about it. Well, I guess if I could get used to it, I could see the battlefield from different points and see the enemy, even if they're in my blind spot. Or I could use them to scout ahead and spy on enemies. Zabuza nodded approvingly. Good. Were it not for that and the stunt you pulled back when we first met, I may have dismissed you as a lost cause by now. Naruto glared at the demon of the mist before Kakashi spoke up. Though I wouldn't be as harsh as Zabuza, I remember how you told me even you had to admit it was foolish to enter Haku's ice mirrors without thinking as you did. You can't deny you could stand to improve your mind, though that's always a good idea. You could also stand to learn the value of patience. Naruto looked slightly dejected at that. Fortunately, as I said, I have an idea for how to catch you up in that respect, and every other for that matter. Naruto's expression brightened at that. Really? What is it? Let's hold off on that until we begin training. Now, before we move on, Kakashi began, reaching into his pocket and pulling out 5 slips of paper. We may as well get this out of the way, he said. Ah, you're going to test their affinities. Not a bad idea, Zabuza stated. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. Affinities? Yes, your nature, or elemental, affinities, said the copy ninja. You don't remember. They explained this to use in the academy. Sakura said, raising her hand and pointing her index finger to the sky as she began to explain. There are 5 basic elements: water, earth, lightning, wind and fire. Obviously, Sasuke's fire-style jutsu or Zabuza and Kakashi's water jutsu are good examples. Everyone has a predisposition towards a single element. Naruto smiled. Oh, I get it. So, you're going to see what our elements are, Kakashi-sensei. That's right. You're going to channel your chakra into these. How your chakra affects them will depend on your affinity. For example, he channeled his chakra into the paper and they all watched as it wrinkled. My affinity is lightning, so my chakra will cause the paper to wrinkle. Fire-natured chakra will cause it to ignite and turn to ash, water will cause it to grow damp, earth will turn to dirt and wind will cause it to split in 2. But, what about Haku's ice element? Naruto asked. Kakashi gave a nod. Good question, Haku, if you don't have a problem with it, he said as he held out another piece of chakra paper to the boy. It's no problem, Haku replied before taking the paper and doing as Kakashi did. The paper split in half and grew damp. My ice element Kekkei Genkai allows me to combine the water and wind elements to create ice. So, no one else can use it because they don't have both affinities. Naruto asked. Well, there's more to it than that. Kakashi replied. Even if you have both affinities, it's very difficult, if not impossible to combine the 2 elements together unless you have the Kekkei Genkai for it. Although, the 3rd Tsuchikage possesses something more advanced. What do you mean? Haku inquired. Ah, yeah, Onoki of both scales. Zabuza stated. He uses the dust element, a Kekkei Tota or bloodline selection. It combines the fire, earth and wind elements to manipulate molecules, allowing him to reduce his opponents to dust. The black-haired Jonin explained, shocking the younger shinobi. Kakashi nodded, The dust element was taught to him by the second, who he had no relation to as far as I know, implying that all one needs to use it is the proper training in the three affinities, although, possessing two of the affinities is very rare outside of bloodline holders. Kakashi explained. There are also the ninja of the land of snow, who use the ice element. Though in their case, rather than combining elements to create ice, all they can do is use their chakra to manipulate already existing ice and snow. Their abilities can't compare to the real thing. Haku seemed slightly surprised that there were other ice elements users, even if they didn't hold the bloodline. In any case, let's get started. And just to be safe, we'll test Sasuke's too. Sasuke's eyes narrowed and Naruto looked slightly confused. Why? I mean, don't we already know his element? No, we know he can use fire jutsu. I can use jutsu of all the elements, although I only have the affinity for lightning. The affinity makes it much easier to learn to use the element and its jutsu, and few ever truly master more than two, their affinity and one other. The only reason I can use so many is because of copied jutsu of the other elements. I'm not known as the man who copied a 1000 jutsu for nothing. He said with an eye smile at the end, reminding the others that, despite his attitude and laziness, he was one of the village's strongest jonin. The Uchiha take pride in their affinity for fire and teach all their members to use it. They even view learning the fireball technique as their coming of age test, so it's doubtful they actually tested his affinity, did they, Sasuke? He turned to the Uchiha, who glared but said nothing. As I thought. Now, ladies first, he said, handing a slip of paper to Sakura. Sakura took it and channeled chakra into it. In moments, the slip of paper turned to dust and crumbled away. The pink-haired girl looked at her now empty hand. I have the earth element. Kakashi hummed. The earth element, with it, one can harden and strengthen anything they channel it into, increasing its defensive and destructive power. You can also manipulate dirt and mud and move through the earth in various ways. He turned to Sasuke with an eye smile. Like when I buried Sasuke up to his neck. Sasuke glared at his sensei before his gaze turned the Jonin's hand as he handed him his own piece of paper. Your turn. Sasuke closed his eyes and snatched the paper from the Jonin. He glanced at it as he channeled his chakra into it, and his eyes widened in shock as the paper wrinkled. What the? Was all the Uchiha could say. Well, what a surprise. It seems you don't have the fire affinity after all. Kakashi commented. Sasuke continued to stare at the paper in shock. But, my entire clan has the fire element. Yes, well, clans are never completely uniform in affinities outside of those with elemental bloodlines. I guess you're just one of the unique ones. Kakashi mused. Naruto snickered. Too bad, Sasuke. Looks like you're the black sheep. If looks could kill, Naruto would have been reduced to a smoldering corpse by Sasuke's glare. Kakashi said. Now, your turn. Naruto grinned. Finally. He took the piece of paper and did as his teammates had and watched the piece of paper grow damp. Before anyone could comment, an unexpected series of events left everyone's mouths agape. The damp piece of paper wrinkled before splitting in half, one half then burned to ash while the other turned to dust. Zabuza's brow furrowed. The hell? Kakashi-sensei. I thought you said it was rare that anyone has more than one affinity. Sakura said. Well, I guess this is proof that his eyes are the real thing. What do you mean? Naruto asked. It's said that the Rinnegan grants its bearer the ability to master all 5 elements and virtually any jutsu, not counting those that require bloodlines. I guess that would include possessing all the affinities. Kakashi explained. So, I can learn every element? Naruto asked excitedly. Sasuke once more glared at the blonde, seeing another example of the Jinchuriki's growing power. Kakashi nodded. Yes, though it will take time. Do you think I could learn to use Haku's ice style, too? You did say, any technique. Kakashi cupped his chin and hummed in thought, looking to the sky. Well, that's what the legends say, and since you have all the elements, considering the dust element is similar and requires no such bloodline, it's possible. In theory, anyway. We'll have to be sure and explore the possibility, he said before looking back to the genin. Now, I figured Zabuza would get impatient and get started before I got her, so I brought lunch. Let's get started once we've finished eating. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his office, once again taking up his endless battle against paperwork while taking the occasional puff from a pipe in his mouth, when he heard a knock on his door. Hiruzen raised his head and quirked a brow. Come in. He beckoned. The door opened to reveal his former friend and rival, Danzo Shimura. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. In their youth the two had been competitive, but they had been on good terms, but as they grew up, many of their philosophies, specifically, how the village should be run, had changed and were now nearly opposite. They were still on decent terms and, so long as nothing went wrong, Danzo rarely interfered with the way he ran the village beyond voicing his own, conflicting opinion. Still, the man rarely came to his office without a reason. It's been a while, Lord Hokage. It's good to see you're still managing, the War Hawk of Konoha said. Hiruzen gave a slight chuckle. I still have a few years left in me. But don't you think you should worry more about yourself? You're almost as old as I am. Indeed, this is true, Danzo said, turning to the window and looking out the village both loved and desired to protect in their own ways. Time will soon pass us by. I can only hope the next generation lives up to the challenge, he said before turning back to his old rival. And hopefully, they don't take the teachings of the Senju to heart. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly. It would be better if they found their own way, based on their experiences. Hiruzen nodded, inhaling deeply before breathing out a plume of smoke. Enough beating around the bush. What has brought you here? I have heard that you have allowed the infamous demon of the mist a chance to join our village. Danzo replied. I merely wished to inquire why you would give him a chance. It's a long story. The short version is that the purpose of his coup was to stop the Mizukage from destroying their nation with his prejudice against bloodlines, and he was vouched for by two people whose intuition I trust, one of whom being Kakashi Hatake. Know that I am keeping him under observation and intend to speak with him more on these matters. Do you intend to have him interrogated? With his knowledge, several of the Land of Mist's secret arts could be ours. Danzo inquired. And perhaps it would be wise to have some insurance in case he decides to use our trust to get back into Kiri's good graces. I believe his student is young and quite skilled. Perhaps he would benefit from my old teaching methods. If we could ensure his loyalty to our village, I'm sure keeping Zabuza under control would be a simple task. No. While I do intend to give him and his apprentice the standard interviews and evaluations one would expect, I will not force him to reveal his village's hidden jutsu, and he will be allowed to keep some things confidential. And we will certainly not use the boy against him. That isn't how this village operates. Danzo's eye narrowed. Once more, your sentimentality prevents the tree that is our village from growing stronger. It is a shame that you follow your sensei's views so wholly. Hiruzen met his glare before Danzo turned towards the door. In any case, I can rest easier now, the man said, turning to the door. In truth, he intended to make his own observations as well. He already knew how the former Kiri Nin was working with Kakashi's team and believed it foolish that Hiruzen had allowed the man to get close to the last Uchiha in their village and their Jinchuriki. Though, with Kakashi near and Zabuza's own skill, he likely wouldn't be able to spy on their training. He would make sure the man wasn't doing anything that could potentially harm their village. And if he did, Danzo was interested in restarting Orochimaru's experiments on bloodline transfusion. Even if he was not allowed to use him against the demon of the mist, the man's protege would provide a powerful new bloodline for the village and his followers in particular, provided his experiments were successful, and if not, he could still acquire the genetic material needed to restart the clan in Konoha. After the ninja finished their meals, the genin stood before the Jonin and Haku. Alright, I'll focus on Sasuke right now. Haku will take Sakura while Zabuza trains with Naruto. But first, you're going to learn a more advanced chakra control exercise. Kakashi said. Reactions among the genin were varied. Sasuke looked indifferent. Naruto looked glad to be trained by a jonin who was equal to his sensei, but more serious, and Sakura looked relieved. Now, as for the idea I spoke of earlier. Naruto, I want you to create 10 shadow clones. Huh, why? Naruto asked. Tell me, have you ever noticed anything odd anytime you've used that technique? Kakashi inquired. No, I don't think so. Naruto replied and Kakashi sighed. I guess I should have seen that coming, you rarely use them outside of a fight. Okay. Naruto listened closely. The blonde nodded. Whenever a shadow clone dispels, any experience or knowledge they gained is transferred to the user of the technique, understand? Sakura and Sasuke's eyes widened in shock at that, while Naruto just looked blankly. Huh, Naruto responded dumbly. Sakura groaned. I can't believe you graduated. Zabuza face-palmed. Kakashi, I hope this works, he said, already seeing where Kakashi was going with this. Yeah, you're not the only one, Kakashi replied. Alright, look at it this way. Let's say one of your clones were to read something. Naruto nodded. When it disperses, you would learn what it read, understand any better. Naruto looked excited. Yeah, before he took on a confused expression. But, why didn't I notice that sooner? Like I said, you've never used them outside of battle. What they experienced was too similar to what you did for you to notice. Kakashi explained as he pulled out a scroll from his vest. Now, as I said, I want you to create 10 shadow clones. While we work on this new exercise, your clones will work on improving your mind. He then opened the scroll, revealing 10 books, including a dictionary, 1 book on anatomy, 1 book on math and the remaining a few on the finer points of being a ninja. Could I use this to learn jutsu faster? Naruto asked excitedly. I think it would be best if you limit their use to gaining knowledge and catching up to your other classmates. This method of learning causes a great deal of mental strain. Kakashi replied. Besides, considering you were able to learn the shadow clone jutsu in a single night, I doubt that will be necessary. Alright, at least I'll be able to get all this without all the boring reading. Sucks for my clones though. Naruto grinned and did as he was told, his clones groaning at being forced to read, while Sasuke scowled. Kakashi, why does the dead last get this special treatment? Couldn't you teach us this jutsu so we could train like this, too? Sasuke asked, more concerned about his own training than Sakura's. Kakashi shrugged. It's not special treatment. Naruto has unusually large chakra reserves. To be more exact, his reserves are massive, even compared to mine. Only someone with reserves as large as his could benefit from training like this. Creating enough clones to really take advantage of this method would cost anyone else too much chakra. Even I wouldn't be able to gain anything from it. Sasuke's scowl deepened. Now, before we begin training in earnest, we're going to teach you 3 to walk on water. What? Are you serious, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked. I take it this is more difficult than tree climbing. Sakura commented. That's right. Due to the shifting surface of the water, you have to constantly calibrate the chakra, rather than maintain a steady flow, or you'll fall in anyway. Allow me to demonstrate, Kakashi said. They'd seen it before, but it was always during the heat of battle. The masked ninja casually walked over and onto the stream, the water rippling at his footsteps as he walked to its center before turning to face them. Alright, your turn. Let's see if any of you can make it to me. The 3 genin nodded before running forward, focusing on their chakra until Naruto and Sasuke immediately noticed how much more difficult it was. Naruto made 10 steps before failing and falling into the water. Sasuke made it farther but soon suffered the same fate as the blonde. As they both resurfaced, they looked over to see Sakura standing next to Kakashi, looking triumphant. That was easy. Well, looks like I underestimated the girl. Zabuza commented. Well, this certainly causes a sense of deja vu, doesn't it? Kakashi commented, his gaze turning to his two submerged genin. It seems you've once again been outdone. At this rate, you may not make it to Chunin. After the tree climbing exercise, I expected you to work on your chakra control without my need to say so, but I guess I was wrong. I'd thought an Uchiha would know how important control is, but I guess, like most of your clan, you're all talk. Zabuza smirked beneath his mask as Sasuke's eyes, blazing with fury, turned to him. And Naruto, how will you ever live up to your end of the bargain you made with the Hokage at this rate? Don't you want to learn about your family? Kakashi's statement added fuel to Naruto's determination. Now, Sakura, you'll move to the next step. Next step? Sakura inquired. Yes, I'll let them take care of that. Kakashi responded, walking towards his two soaked students as Sakura's eyes widened as they shot to the Miss Jonin. Zabuza's smirk widened. Good, as entertaining as it is to watch Genin fail miserably, this is far more amusing. It's a lot more difficult to maintain control while in a fight, so you'll be sparring with Haku until controlling your chakra becomes second nature to you. Sakura paled as Haku stepped onto the water, an apologetic look on his face before several Senbon appeared in his hand and he fell into a combat stance. Prepare yourself, Sakura.